In 2003, neuroscientist Alan Sanfey slid a volunteer into an fMRI brain scanner and gave them a simple task. A stranger in another room had been given $20 and was about to propose a split. The volunteer could accept, and both would keep their shares, or they could reject, and both would get nothing. The stranger offered $2 out of 20, an 18-2 split. Inside the scanner, two brain regions activated simultaneously. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational calculation, registered the obvious. $2 is better than zero, accept. But the anterior insula, the region associated with disgust, the same area that fires when you smell rotting food or see something physically repulsive, lit up with equal intensity. The unfair offer was not merely disappointing, it was neurologically indistinguishable from encountering something disgusting. The insula won the argument. The volunteer rejected the offer. Both walked away with nothing. This was not an anomaly. It was the most common response, and it proved something that classical economics had refused to accept for over a century, that human beings do not maximize profit. They maximize fairness. And when the two conflict, fairness wins, even at a direct, measurable financial cost to the person enforcing it. The experiment Sanfey was building on had been invented 21 years earlier, in 1982, by a German economist named Werner Güth and his colleagues Rolf Schmidberger and Bernd Schwarze. They called it the Ultimatum Game. The rules are elemental. One person is given a sum of money and proposes a split with a stranger. The stranger can accept, in which case both keep their shares, or they can reject, destroying the money entirely. One offer, one response, no negotiation. Classical game theory predicts the outcome with mechanical certainty. The stranger should accept any offer above zero. $1 is better than none. And the proposer, knowing this, should offer the absolute minimum. Keep 99, give 1. The prediction of Nash equilibrium, the prediction of rational self-interest, the prediction of a century of economic thought. It is also spectacularly, consistently, universally wrong. Güth's results demolished the rational model. Proposers did not offer the minimum. The average offer was around 40%. Most proposed something close to 50-50. And responders did not accept everything. Offers below 30% were rejected about half the time. Below 20%, the rejection rate climbed to a vast majority. People were voluntarily destroying free money rather than accepting a split they perceived as unfair. They were setting their own cash on fire to punish a stranger's greed. This finding has been replicated thousands of times in dozens of countries across 4 decades. A meta-analysis by Oosterbeek and colleagues reviewed 37 studies and confirmed the pattern. Proposers consistently offer around 40%, and low offers are consistently rejected. The Ultimatum Game is now one of the most cited experiments in the history of social science. Sanfey's brain scans revealed the biological machinery beneath the behavior. Fairness is not a social construct we learn in school. It is a biological imperative we feel in our nervous system. The brain does not deliberate about whether unfairness is wrong. It recoils from unfairness the way it recoils from poison. And this has enormous consequences for how the real economy works. Because the Ultimatum Game is not a laboratory curiosity. It is a model of every transaction where one party sets the terms and the other can walk away, which is virtually every economic interaction that exists. Consider pricing. In research published by Daniel Kahneman and Richard Thaler on what they called the fairness constraint, they posed a simple scenario to survey participants. A hardware store has been selling snow shovels for $15, and after a major snowstorm, the store raises the price to $20. From a classical perspective, this is rational. Demand increased. Supply is limited. The price should rise. Economics 101. Over 80% of respondents judged the increase as unfair. A significant proportion said they would refuse to buy the shovel and would actively avoid the store in the future, even if it meant shoveling their driveway by hand. The respondents were playing the ultimatum game. The store proposed a new split of surplus value. I will charge you more because I can. The customers rejected the offer, even though a $20 shovel is still useful and available. Surge pricing triggers the same biological machinery at massive scale. When a ride-sharing app quadruples its fare during a rainstorm, the algorithm is doing exactly what the price mechanism is supposed to do, allocating a scarce resource to those who value it most. But passengers experience it as exploitation. The app that normally charges $12 is demanding $48, not because the service improved, but because the company detected that you are stranded and desperate. The insula fires. The response is disgust. Multiple ride-sharing platforms have introduced price caps during emergencies and natural disasters because the public relations cost of being perceived as exploitative exceeded the revenue from surge pricing. The market efficiency was mathematically optimal. The fairness violation made it economically catastrophic. The same dynamic explains why pharmaceutical price spikes generate such volcanic public outrage. In 2015, a pharmaceutical company acquired the rights to a decades-old drug used to treat parasitic infections and raised the price overnight from $13.50 per tablet to $750. The company's CEO argued the increase was necessary to fund research and was justified by the drug's small market. The economic logic was defensible, but the public response was a textbook ultimatum game rejection. Congressional hearings, media firestorms, widespread calls for regulation. The perceived unfairness of profiting from the desperation of sick people activated the same disgust circuitry that Sanfey had observed in the scanner. The CEO became one of the most hated people in America. The company's stock eventually collapsed. The fairness violation was more expensive than the price increase was profitable. The labor market is another theater where the ultimatum game plays out continuously. Strikes are the ultimate rejection. Workers are offered a split of the value they create: salary, benefits, working conditions. If they perceive the split as unfair, if management is capturing too much of the surplus, they reject the offer. They walk away from their paychecks. They endure weeks or months of zero income. This is profoundly irrational by classical standards. A worker earning $30 an hour who strikes for a $5 raise loses $30 per hour for every hour on the picket line. The break-even point can be years away. Many strikers never recoup the lost wages. But they strike anyway. Because the issue is not the money. The issue is the split. Whether the division of value between labor and capital feels fair. When it does not, people will burn their own income to punish the perceived unfairness, exactly as the ultimatum game predicts. The tipping system in American restaurants is an ultimatum game hiding in plain sight. A server provides a service. The customer decides the split, typically 15 to 20% of the bill. The server cannot reject the offer in the traditional sense, but they can provide visibly worse service to customers they perceive as unfair tippers, and they share information about bad tippers with colleagues. Research has found that tipping behavior is driven far more by social fairness norms than by the quality of service received. Studies show almost no correlation between the objective quality of a meal and the tip percentage. What does correlate is the customer's sense of what constitutes a fair division of the dining experience, a culturally calibrated ultimatum game played at millions of tables every evening. Customer service interactions operate on the same logic. A company delivers a defective product. The customer calls to complain. The company offers a partial refund, a proposed split of the loss. If the customer perceives the offer as unfair, they reject it, not by walking away, by escalating. Social media posts, negative reviews, complaints to consumer protection agencies. The customer is willing to spend hours of their time worth far more than the refund, to punish the perceived unfairness. Companies that understand the ultimatum game invest heavily in generous return policies, not because every refund is justified, but because the cost of a fairness violation, a viral social media complaint, a lost lifetime customer, far exceeds the cost of a replacement product. Cross-cultural research has revealed a fascinating dimension of the fairness instinct. In 2001, anthropologist Joseph Henrich and colleagues tested the ultimatum game in 15 small-scale societies around the world: hunter-gatherers in the Amazon, pastoralists in East Africa, whale hunters in Indonesia, slash-and-burn farmers in Papua New Guinea. The rejection of unfair offers was universal. Every society punished greed, but the threshold of what counted as fair varied enormously. In some societies, proposers offered as much as 58%, more than half. In others, the average was around 26%. The variations correlated with the economic structures of each society. Cultures with more market integration and cooperative institutions had stronger fairness norms and higher offers. More individualistic cultures showed weaker fairness enforcement. The impulse toward fairness is biological, but the calibration, where the line between fair and unfair falls, is cultural. We are hardwired to punish, but our culture tells us when. In the modern, digitally transparent economy, this calibration is shifting rapidly. Social media has made executive compensation visible to millions of people who previously had no idea how much CEOs earned relative to workers. When employees learn that their CEO earns 300 times their salary, the information does not change their paycheck, but it changes their perception of the split. That perception, the sense that the division is unfair, triggers the same insula-driven disgust that causes laboratory subjects to reject lowball offers. The result is rising demands for pay transparency, minimum wage increases, and executive compensation limits. Not because the economics changed, but because the visibility of the split changed. People can now see the offer, and when it looks like 99-1, the biological machinery of fairness activates at societal scale. International trade negotiations are ultimatum games played between nations. When one country imposes tariffs that another perceives as unfair, the retaliatory tariffs that follow are economically damaging to both sides, just like rejecting the offer in the game. The retaliating country hurts its own consumers and importers, but the perceived unfairness of the original tariff demands punishment, even at self-imposed economic cost. Trade wars are the geopolitical equivalent of a laboratory subject setting $20 on fire because the split was insulting. Philanthropy reveals the ultimatum game operating in reverse. When a billionaire donates a conspicuously small percentage of their wealth, a donation that is large in absolute terms but tiny relative to their fortune, the public response is often criticism rather than gratitude. $100 million donation from someone worth $100 billion is a 0.1% contribution. The absolute number is staggering. The perceived split is insulting. The public is unconsciously playing the ultimatum game with the billionaire's entire net worth as the pot. And when the offer looks like 99.9 to 0.1, the reaction is rejection, media criticism, social media mockery, accusations of performative generosity. The disgust response fires even when the rejected money would fund hospitals. Here is the deepest paradox of all. Rejecting an unfair offer is irrational at the individual level. You are destroying your own money. You are worse off than if you had accepted. But it is profoundly rational at the social level. If nobody ever rejected unfair offers, proposers would learn they can take everything. The split would degrade to 99 to 1 in every transaction. Exploitation would become the norm. The willingness to punish unfairness, even at personal cost, is what prevents this. It is a credible threat. It says to every proposer, every employer, every corporation, every government, if you take too much, I will burn the deal. I will walk away. I will hurt myself to hurt you. And that threat, irrational for any individual act, is what holds the entire cooperative structure of human civilization together. Evolutionary biologists call this altruistic punishment, costly for the punisher, beneficial for the group. It enforces the norms of cooperation and reciprocity that allow large-scale societies to function. Without it, we would be a species of pure rational maximizers, unable to cooperate, unable to trust, unable to build institutions that require fair division of resources. The rejection in the ultimatum game is not a bug in human cognition. It is a feature. It is the immune system of civilization. Every time you feel that visceral, burning indignation at someone taking more than their share, at a price gouger, an exploitative employer, a system that divides resources unjustly, you are feeling the same ancient neural machinery that fires in the brain of a stranger in a laboratory looking at a 90 to 10 split and choosing, against all rational calculation, to set the money on fire. Because some things are worth more than money. And fairness, it turns out, is one of them.